Most business owners know that they should document their processes. It makes delegation easier, results in consistent performance, reduces mistakes, and ultimately makes business less stressful. But so few businesses have actually documented their processes and have them kept up to date. One of the reasons for this is that leaders miss a critical opportunity for the right time to document a process. So in this episode, I'll share what this is and how to take action and the impact that this has. Welcome to Destress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. And in this episode, I'm going to be diving deep into a critical opportunity for the right time to document a process. Well, one of my favorite proverbs says that the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. The second best time is now. And when it comes to having processes in place in your business, this can definitely feel the case. As an example, I've been traveling a lot over the last few weeks, including a week in Nashville for XeroCon, hence why my voice is a little hoarse. Lots of meetings and conversations accompanied by very loud live music. But my team have been doing a phenomenal job running the business without me. However, they did have one issue around team members moving countries. Not me. It was particularly where team members wanted to move and actually live somewhere for a while, not a holiday for a week. We're talking months. Now, I should explain, we're 100% remote across my various businesses. It was a decision that me and Paddy took early on, that's what we wanted to do and give ourselves the freedom. But it means that we have people in 9 countries across 5 continents. And it means that most of them work remotely and that's all fine. But occasionally some want to move again and say, well, actually, I'd like to spend a bit of time working in Portugal or Spain or Poland or Canada or Thailand or wherever. And we want to be able to support that. As long as the business can work effectively and that they can still be available and all these sorts of things, then that's absolutely fine with us. But it does come with those complications. Payroll being an obvious one. If they move for a significant period of time, their resident location and whether they have to have work visas and all that kind of stuff kicks in. And then you have to set up payroll there. And also, what about cost of living? Does that mean that then we should change their pay? And if it results in a decrease in pay, should that happen? And what if it's an increase in pay, but can we afford that increase in pay? And so on. And then you get into data security issues and availability due to time zones and the impact on travel costs for our annual team meetup. Like, who takes on the cost if it is now more expensive for them to get there? All of those things make this complicated. And for this area, we didn't have a clear policy or process. We had some policies and things that kind of perhaps alluded to it, but nothing concrete that solved all the things I've just described. Now, the impact when we had a team member that said, hey, my family situation has changed. I'm going to move, in this case, from India to Canada, and essentially indefinitely. Like, it might be going back at some point, whatever, but it's like it could be permanent. That problem, that from leadership's perspective of wanting to support that, cost days and days and days of leadership time and discussions and working out what needed to happen and what we're okay with and what that means for pay and all these sorts of things took ages. Now, we wanted to keep that employee, so it's important for us to manage that process in a positive way and to do so quickly because they were going to be needing to move quite soon. But it was really painful. It completely derailed many of my leadership team, which was frustrating, particularly for them. They were excited to be able to get actual work done while I wasn't there. But I was so glad that they were able to deal with it, and frankly able to still deal with it without me. It was a testament to the incredible people we have on the team. But what I really loved was that something that they did as they went along was to document the process and to, wherever they were agreeing essentially decisions about, or views on how things should work, those were captured in our policy document as part of our employee handbook. And everything was done as we went along, any agreements with the exec team, etc., all of that. Now, that took a little bit of extra time. However, we got the impact and the payback on that very quickly. Well, firstly, the fact that it was documented as we went along did make it easier to make sure that everyone was on the same page in terms of agreements. We've all been in the situation where you feel like you've agreed something, and then later on, someone's like, wait, what? I didn't know we're going to lunch now. I thought we were going later. And it's because you agreed it verbally and you both had different understandings. If you write it down, it makes it much harder to have that disagreement. And so that was useful in itself. But it became even more useful when just a few days later, a different employee said, actually, unrelated, they weren't even aware of the other team member. It wasn't like it was prompted, just coincidence. And they said, oh yeah, I've been in this place for a while. I think I'd like to move over here and move to another country for a bit. But the nice thing is, because we'd got the policy, we've got the process, it meant that for the employee, it was just a case of, yep, no problem. Here's our policy, read through that, make sure you understand that and accept that. And then we take you through the process. And as a result, it took just 1 hour. And that's the difference. Rather than it taking a week of multiple team members, instead it took one line manager 1 hour, and was so easy and nice and smooth and so on. And that's a huge impact. And then only a few days later, we had a different employee from a different part of the business who said that due to, in the particular country that they're in, there's some political unrest at the moment and protests and all sorts of things. They said, I think I'm done. I think for my safety, I'm going to move to another country. And so we're able to support that. So if you don't have a process for something that is complex and that may happen again like that, create one as you go along. Now, you get huge benefit of that, as I've just covered. However, being reactive in that way won't always save you. Deciding I'll plant the tree when I need one isn't always the best strategy. And actually, we've got a process that we have in place that's very proactive, that recently gave us a couple of massive wins. So it's a process we call conduct an HR check-in, which essentially, I suppose, could be described as a proactive exit interview. So one of the things that we identified is when we did an exit, I think it was the very first time we did an exit interview, actually. We did an exit interview and it was fascinating. The things we learned about the company and things that they found annoying that we weren't necessarily aware of, or things that they found attractive to pull them outside of the company that, again, we're oblivious to. And we thought, that's amazing. I'm glad we've got this process for doing an exit interview, but I wish we knew this earlier. And so we created this HR check-in process, which interestingly now isn't done by HR, it's done by other leaders across the business. So like the head of sales will do it for the team members in the software development team. And we go through a process with a series of questions to identify, to ask questions like, what do you love most about working in the company? But also questions such as, what would it take for you to be to be poached out the organization? What would need to happen? In fact, I think it's what would need to happen for you to leave the company. And often we get lovely things like the culture to change. Like, they love it so much that it's like, oh, well, this bit and this bit of the culture would need to change to make it not. But in one particular HR check-in that was done fairly recently, the employee mentioned travel, incidentally. And it was one of the ones that has now since traveled. And for them, that was an important thing. The fact that they could move around regularly, or there was flexibility for it, was something that's really important for them and their well-being and what they want from their life. And that's something that, as a remote company, you can imagine people applying to us thinking that might be something that they can get, and that if they can't, then they might leave. And for us, it's something that we employ people all over the place. So it's not a big deal in many ways to do that. It's just there's some nuts and bolts that need doing. And so that's resulted in processes as I've described. But another example we had was a team member who actually turned out wanted more coaching on a particular part of their role, a relatively minor part of their role, and that hadn't been picked up as part of their one-to-ones with their manager. And so that gave an opportunity for us to both look at, okay, why wasn't it picked up in those one-to-ones with the manager? could we improve that, or do we need to speak to that line manager to improve it? But also just looking at it, oh, well, that's something we can definitely help with, is let's provide more training and coaching in this particular area. And so that was really, really nice, but it's a very proactive process. It's something that we run annually with each employee, and as I say, on this sort of cross structure of different leaders doing it, which is nice for those leaders as well, because they get to spend some time and really understand what's going on in a different part of the business. But it works well for the employee because they're being interviewed by someone who isn't on their line management structure at all. And so as a result, it's not going above their head or going to be fed up to that manager in a negative way. And it's really helpful for us as an executive team that we see as part of that process, there's a step to share a summary in a particular way. And so the entire exec team sees that summary of that conversation, so that we're kept on a regular basis aware of what people are liking about working there, what people don't like, what could be improved, what would it take for them to leave, all those sorts of things. And that's pretty amazing for visibility, which we wouldn't otherwise get, particularly all the way down the organization where you've got a couple of layers of line management in there. So that's been absolutely fantastic. And if you would like some of the templates that I've described, or the templates of the processes that I've described around HR check-ins, and on even, I suppose, moving country, we could probably turn that into a template if you're interested. And then just email me, alexis.kingsbury@airmanual.co. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this episode useful. If you did, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review with a comment, even if it's just one word. It'll take you 30 seconds and it will have a huge impact on this podcast and my life. I read them all. I really appreciate it. If you write a really lovely comment, I'm guaranteed to reach out to you directly. So please do that. It makes a huge difference, and it doesn't take you very long to do it. So go ahead and do that. But otherwise, until next time, have fun.